Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I made a video yesterday saying, look, no one has ever gotten fat by eating too much fruit, at least no documented case by any registered dietitian, people who work in the obesity clinics and things like that. And then people always come in with these absurd ideas, these absurd comparisons. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling at my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this, because people always do this. When you try to give practical advice that applies in the real world, you have people, and they honestly think that they're being smart, but what it actually shows that these are people who aren't really capable of thinking. They're not capable of critical thinking, and they might actually not even be that intelligent. Because when you give a practical advice out there, there's always people who are like, they think if they can come up with some extreme to break a general rule that will apply to 99.9% of people walking the earth, even people who exercise it, that it's somehow they've done something impressive, right? That's what they always do. Just like if you say, hey, you know what? And I can be honest here, I can make a gamble right now. I can say to this whole audience, you know what? You will never bench press over 700 pounds raw meat legal. You will never do it, all right? Not practically achievable. It's kind of like saying, no one has ever gotten fat by eating fruit, by eating too much fruit. It's other foods that contributed. It's actually extremely, insanely difficult to get fat by eating fruit. It could be done, but the amount of work you would have to put into it would be enormous. Well, it's the same thing with the 700+ pound raw bench press. Because it wasn't that long ago when no human being had ever achieved this. It was unachievable until relatively recently, as far as even powerlifting goes, right? And only a handful of people have done it. How many people have literally killed themselves, ripped pecs off the bone, hospitalized themselves, been injured, destroyed themselves with drug abuse trying to achieve this goal and didn't reach it? The number of people who have actually harmed themselves working towards this goal and never reaching it exceeds the number of people who've reached it. Let that sink in. In other words, people have worked at it so hard that they harmed themselves and were still unsuccessful. The majority of people who tried to get to a 700-pound bench press have probably ripped a pec, hurt themselves, used so many drugs that they harmed themselves trying to get there. A handful of guys have done it. But when I say a handful, I mean a handful. It's not like a dozen people have done this in the world ever. It's a tiny number of guys. A few guys have done it. So if I say that, does that mean, because this guy did it, that must mean that I could pull it off if I work hard enough? No, you won't. Statistically speaking, I can say right now, and this will be true for well over 99.9% of lifters. I can take 1,000 lifters, and I promise you 999 do not have the genetics to ever achieve this feat, no matter how hard they work, how much drugs they inject, how much they eat. They will not reach this goal. And I know that because statistically, they don't have the genetics for it. It's that rare of a gift. All right, it's that rare. I can say that with confidence. But that doesn't mean that just because someone else has done it that it's not true. You guys understand where we're going with this? This is a channel where we discuss nutrition and training. This is practical advice. This is advice to get the majority of people into shape, the majority of people to reach their goals, whether that goal is to lose 50 pounds of body fat, 100 pounds of body fat, get in shape, to run a marathon, to win a powerlifting meet, to maybe work towards going state in your high school football team and try to get a football scholarship. Practical advice for people reaching their goals. And the advice is geared here towards those goals. And some things people need to be realistic about. When we say no one has ever gotten fat by overeating fruit, that means no registered dietitian's ever seen a documented case of it that they could confirm. It doesn't happen. It's very hard to eat enough fruit to get fat. Now, if you were to go eat half a pound of bacon every day and then gorge on as much fruit as you could, you could probably gain some fat doing that. But I mean, realistically speaking, people will say, well, I could do this or that. And they'll say, well, what happens if you eat 10,000 calories of watermelon? Or if you tried to eat enough watermelon to gain fat. Let's look at these two different examples. 10,000 calories of watermelon, I can promise you with almost absolute certainty you would either be hospitalized or die. All right? You do not have the volume in your GI tract to take watermelons, whole watermelons, cut the rind off, and eat 10,000 calories of that in a 24-hour period. The human digestive system doesn't have enough volume to hold that. Let that sink in. You can't physically do it. It won't fit. You can't do it. Before someone says, hold my beer, that would be like me saying you can't survive shooting yourself in the head 6 times. Don't try it. All right, some common sense in math, you'd be like, wait, he's right. My guts and stuff would bust open before if I were to force feed this into myself, I would be throwing back up, or my intestines would rupture before I got there. All right, you're going to be hospitalized if you try. If you do successfully do so, if you manage to stretch your intestines and GI tract enough out to eat this, you're going to die of water intoxication. All right, you can only handle about 3 gallons of water intake in a day. People start dying from it. They get brain swelling. You don't think there's 3 gallons of water in that much watermelon? People say, wait, how much watermelon are we talking about? Well, think about that. A big whole-size watermelon. Watermelon. It's 1,500 calories. 6 whole watermelons is still less than 10,000 calories. It's in the 9,000s, like 950. In other words, 6 whole watermelons. Those things have about a gallon of volume each. That's 6 gallons of watermelon, and you still need a little more. That's a lot of volume. So someone says, well, what couldn't they just do that? What would happen? Could they gain fat? No, they wouldn't gain fat. They would die trying. Same token, could you physically consume enough watermelon to gain fat? I'm going to say no. If you were to go on an all watermelon diet and do a DEXA scan and you were to eat watermelon every day until you puke. In other words, you eat so much watermelon that you are vomiting watermelon back up, you reach your limit. Could you consume enough watermelon to gain, say, 5 pounds of fat? I don't think it could be achieved. I don't think practically that you could achieve it. And that's based upon what we know of basic thermogenesis, the Novo Lipogenesis, so on and so forth. And people say, well, couldn't you just? No, you couldn't do it. And I know because I've eaten 2 whole watermelons in a day before. While cutting, by the way, while losing weight, I've successfully eaten 2 entire watermelons. All right. I'm going to say I ate that and a little bit of chicken that day. In the middle of my cut, by the way, and I've been losing weight. I'm going to tell you guys, I'm a big eater. I can eat enormous amounts of food. That's why guys are like, oh, you don't really get ripped. And sometimes you guys have seen me gain a lot of weight while still doing cardio because I can pack food away. I'm an enormous eater. I can eat 4,000 calories of rice in one day without giving it a second thought. Me eating 2 whole watermelons, which is about 3,000 calories, was literally the most food I could physically fit in my body in one day. Now, that being said, so yeah, eating 3,000 calories of watermelon is a lot. I promise you, most people can't do it. I bet you about 21 in 5 people could successfully do it. I could do it. I have done it. Well, that's 3,000 calories with almost 0 fat in it. Now, people say, well, you know, what about de novo lipogenesis? Humans don't gain appreciable body fat from de novo lipogenesis. Humans who do not have metabolic syndrome or basically type 2 diabetes already don't store significant amounts of body fat from de novo lipogenesis. Meaning, for you to gain an entire pound or 2 of body fat in a single month from de novo lipogenesis, you can't store enough of it that way for it to gain that much fat. Could you store enough of it? If you were to overeat excessive amounts of carbs on like a nearly 0 fat diet, could you gain a couple of ounces of fat in a month? That way, yeah, you could probably gain an ounce or 2 of fat in a month. If you ate 1,000 calories of surplus carbs on an almost 90% carb diet, you could gain an ounce or 2 of fat. It can be done. You would gain little bits of fat, but to gain a pound or 2 in a month's time, you couldn't do that from de novo lipogenesis. So the problem we're getting into is you're basically needing over a 500 calorie surplus consistently every day, 7 days a week to start storing close to 100, or 50 calories of fat in a day. Like that's what we're talking about. And not all of that stores as fat. The reason we have de novo lipogenesis in humans when we go on an ultra low fat, high carb diet is because you're not getting enough fats to survive on, and you need those lipids to form hormones and other stuff in your body. So your body will start to convert small amounts, a few grams of your carbs into fat to handle basic metabolic functions. Doesn't mean that you necessarily are gaining body fat from it. So you're not going to be able to eat enough watermelon that has nearly 0 fat in it. You're not going to be able to overeat enough watermelon if that's all you ate in a month's time to see a measurable amount like with the DEXA scan would pick up, you really need to gain at least a pound of fat before the DEXA scan even's going to measure it. It would be almost impossible to do that. Like just biologically speaking, it would be hard to do it. So when people say things like this, they're not really thinking it through. You could do it. Hypothetically, could you consume enough watermelon or fruit, just straight normal fruits? And we're not talking about stuff that it would not fruits in the sense of we're talking about something with almost zero fat in it and mostly sugar. All right, fruits, not avocado, because people bring that up. It's very, very difficult for you to eat enough fruit if you were to go on an all-fruit diet to do that. Furthermore, it's not healthy to do that, so why someone would take a challenge like this and say, well, I'll go you top limit fruitarian. It's not healthy. It's not a balanced diet. Don't do it. It's silly. It's silly. I wouldn't recommend that, but the point of all of this was, people bring up these crazy challenges. Oh, you could do this, you could do that. You're wrong because calories in, calories out. And calories in, calories out does matter. Absolutely biggest factor. But you're not factoring in the calories out on the thermogenesis of doing this. Or the calories expended through de novo lipogenesis. They're relatively high. So you're still not beating the calories out equation. But the fact of the matter is, the whole point of all this is fruit isn't fattening. Fruit is, from the perspective of most foods, near the bottom end of the fattening scale. All right, in other words, it would be almost statistically, biologically impossible under normal conditions for a person to consume enough fruit to gain significant body fat. I'm not saying we're not combined with other foods, but the fruit itself, minimal contribution. This is not the foods people should be worried about if they're trying to lose weight, trying to not gain fat, things like that. Worrying about fruit should be like the least of your concerns. It's absurd, and that's the point of all of this. It doesn't mean that you couldn't hypothetically, under some bizarre scenario, gorge on enough fruit for 3 years straight to get fat. You could hypothetically do it if you set it out to be your life mission, but why would you do something that stupid? That's not practical advice, and that doesn't remove the practical advice that fruit isn't fattening. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.